Hey guys, my name is Steve Guttenberg and I am the audiophiliac, and I have a message today. And the message is, don't buy an expensive pair of speakers yet. No, just hold off for a second. I want you, or I would urge you strongly, to play the field before you plunk down a lot of money to buy a really expensive speaker. And I don't care if the speaker's got rave reviews or your friends say it's amazing. That's not what we're doing here today. What I think you need to do is to listen to as many different types of speakers as possible. And this could take years, a year if you just set out to do this, right? A couple of years, 3 years, 4 years, to just put in the time and learn to develop your taste. Because until you experience these types of speakers at home, you won't really know what's out there. To just go from one box to the next box to the next is not the worst idea. But if you would go from a box speaker to, let's say, a panel speaker, like a Magnapan or an electrostatic speaker like a Quad or a Martin Logan or an audiostatic, they put sound in a room in a completely different way than the box speaker does. The box speaker pushes sound forward. That's it, right? But a panel speaker, generally it radiates just as much sound from the rear panel as the front. So it's energizing the room in a different way, and it sounds different than box speakers. They sound more open, more spacious, they have greater depth, etc., etc. Of course, it depends on the specifics, but I'm just saying as a type. And then, of course, there's horn speakers, JBLs, avant-garde acoustic, Klipsch, which is what I'm using right now. These are Klipsch Cornwall 4s. They have a live sound. They project sound forward in a very immediate fashion, a very forward way. That's kind of like the sound you hear at concerts. Concert sound systems generally have horn speakers. So the sound we associate with live is the sound of horn speakers. And you're not going to get that out of an electrostatic speaker or an omnidirectional speaker or an open baffle speaker. They're not the same thing. So horn speakers do a thing that appeals to some audiophiles. I'm not saying it's a universal solution that everybody will like horn speakers. I'm just saying it's one of the things that until you live with it, a good pair of horn speakers, you literally do not know what you're missing. And in a way, I could say omnidirectional speakers are the exact opposite of horn speakers. If they radiate sound 360 degrees, or if not quite 360, but in a more omnidirectional manner, right? And you could say that that's more the way instruments radiate sound in real life. So omnidirectional speakers have a sound that is just unbox-like, that's for sure. Omnidirectional speakers are made by Ohm here in Brooklyn, German physics, German speaker obviously, MBL, some older Mirage speakers or Omnis. They have this spaciousness that you don't get from any other type of speaker. Even open baffle speakers or dipole speakers, Omnis are a thing unto themselves. And again, if you've never heard it, and especially if you've never heard it in your home, you've missed out on something really important in the idea of reproducing sound at home. That's what this is about, right? So what else we got? We have open baffle speakers like this Spatial Audio Lab I reviewed recently, and Pure Audio Project, where it's basically a panel, but instead of a thin film driver like an electrostatic or a Magnapan, they have a conventional looking woofer or mid-range on the back of them. So you walk around an open baffle speaker and it looks flat in the front, but in the back you just see the drivers. There's no box. That's why it's called open baffle. And those are, again, just amazing. They're so much fun. I had the best time doing that review of the Spatial Audio Lab M4 Sapphire. And it's not an expensive speaker. It's in the $4,000 range. It's not expensive by high-end standards. They do make, they don't make less expensive, well, they do make one less expensive model. And so does, I think, Pure Audio Project. But the point is, it's yet another type of speaker. Then there's full range drivers. That's a little harder to explain, but I just put it this way. It looks like a normal woofer, except it goes from the bass all the way up to the treble. There's no crossover using the speaker. It's a single driver that covers the full frequency range, which is why it's called a full range driver. And, not to confuse things, but zoo speakers, their driver, that 10-inch driver that's on practically every zoo ever made, that goes all the way down to the bass up to about 10K. And then there is a tweeter, as I said, not to make it too confusing. But most of the sound you're hearing in a zoo speaker comes from that 10-inch driver. And there's this Chinese company that Nelson Pass just turned me on to called LII. And I'm getting a bookshelf version of one of their speakers. They make many different models, but they're getting some buzz out there in the audiophile universe. But of course, there's Lowther drivers, there's Jordan drivers. These are full range drivers. I think Fostex makes some. So they have an appeal in their purity, that there's no crossover. It's a direct connection between your amplifier and the driver because there's no crossover in between. I just want to circle back just for a second to electrostatic speakers like Quads and Martin Logans. They have a sound that's super fast and transparent. If you're searching for the ultimate in purity and clarity above all, that's what you get from an electrostatic speaker. They're definitely never going to get from a box speaker. You're not going to get from an open baffle. I mean, they're their own thing, which has very strong appeal for a certain type of audiophile. So what I'm suggesting here is that before any of you who aren't super experienced with different types of speakers, before you ever spend a lot of money on a pair of speakers, a lot of money, whatever that is to you, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, whatever it is, before you do that, you owe it to yourself to spend at least some time listening to a few of these types that I just described. All of them, preferably, really. And maybe you can buy them used, so you're not going to, lose a lot of money every time you buy and sell. And actually, the best way to approach this journey, this education, is to have more than one of them at a time. Let's say an electrostatic and an omnidirectional at the same time. And then you will know. You will know which way to go. And that's what today's rant is all about, is figuring out your direction. Because many of us only really listen to box speakers, right? They're just so common, and there's hundreds of them out there, hundreds of different brands and models that you could just stay in that realm of just listening to boxes. And that's cool. I mean, boxes are the most popular because they have a lot going for them. But if you see your audiophile life as something that, stretches out in front of you, and you want to make a real commitment to get the best speaker you can for you, meaning for you, for your taste, for your room, for the kind of electronics that you use, the kind of music that you listen to. If you want to figure out the big picture, which is the best way to get there, you got to put in the time and learn how to listen to different kinds of speakers and music from them. Now, I'm not suggesting this sort of approach for making a major commitment to, let's say, a preamplifier or a power amplifier or a DAC or a turntable, because the differences between those are significant, but they're not quite like speakers. Because speakers are, let's just put it this way, they're playing your room in ways that an amplifier won't, or a preamp or a turntable. They don't play the room. The speakers are playing. They're interacting with your room. That's huge. And you will learn so much when you do this. I promise you it'll be an interesting ride, because some of them actually you might immediately realize that it's not for you. And some of them you might be smitten, and maybe 6 months later you're kind of bored with it, right? So it's a thing you got to take your time. And maybe the one that turns you off right away, maybe you just got to work a little harder to understand what's going on. So patience is definitely a virtue when it comes to being an audiophile. I hope this really helps. That's my goal here, is to help you, not to confuse you. And if I have confused any of you, I apologize. But anyway, here's the best part. The best part is it is now time for the audiophiliac viewer system of the day. This one comes from John. He lives in sunny England. His amplifier comes from Denmark. It's a Lingdorf TDA 2200. For digital, for CDs at least, he is using a Meridian Model 206 Delta Sigma player. For the analog part, it's a Technics SL120 turntable with an SME 3009 Mark III tone arm. Cartridge is Technics 205C Mark III. And that is connected to a PS Audio GC-PH phonopreamp. The speakers are Yamaha C809s, and the speaker cables, those are AudioQuest Rocket 44s. Thanks, John. We are back. My name is Steve Guttenberg, and I am the Audiophiliac. If you like what I'm doing here on the channel, please hit that like button. The YouTube algorithm favors audiophile creators, that's me, with people who hit that like button a lot. So please do that, if you think I deserve it, of course. And of course, the other thing is subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel. I would truly appreciate it. And if you already have done that, thank you so much for doing that. But I got a new thing. It's called the Audiophiliac Podcast. It's sort of a companion to the YouTube channel. And I just started it recently. And by the way, I do hear from you guys that you're not necessarily into the podcast. A lot of people love podcasts, and a lot of people are like, I don't know how to do it. I don't want to do it. Think of podcasts. If you're sitting out the whole podcast thing, think of it this way. Podcasts are basically radio on demand. You play it when you want to play it, right? And otherwise, it functions to me the way I think of them, because I do listen to a lot of podcasts. I think of podcasts as radio, except I decide when I'm going to listen to it, right? So if you don't want to do a thing with Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything, you can hear my podcast, the Audiophiliac Podcast, on Google. You can just Google search Audiophiliac Podcast, and you will see some of my podcasts there, and you will be dazzled. You'll be dazzled by what's coming out of these shows. Anyway, I'm joking around. It's a work in progress. I'm figuring out how to do it. It's going to get a lot better as I have more practice doing them. And then, of course, I must mention the Patreon. If you guys want to support the channel, here's how you do it. Check out my Patreon, which can be found at patreon.com/audiophiliac, and there is a link to that directly below. And, Patreon now accepts payment in dollars, pounds, and euros. And with that, I can now say my work here is at last complete. Thank you for indulging me, and I really do hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.